Kendall, New South Wales, Australia, a quiet country town on the mid-north coast, half an hour from Port Macquarie, population just over 1,000. The kind of place where locals know each other, where children ride bikes in driveways, where neighbors wave from verandas. Friday, September 12th, 2014. A mild morning, 18 degrees. A 3-year-old boy in a blue and red Spider-Man suit is playing in his foster grandmother's backyard on Banneroon Drive. He is doing what he always does, running, roaring, playing a game he calls Daddy Tiger. His foster mother, Angela, is watching him from the deck. His foster grandmother, Mary, is beside her. At some point between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., William Tyrrell runs around the corner of the house. His mother hears one last roar, then silence. She walks around the corner. He is not there. She calls his name. She checks ferns under the balcony. She runs to the street. She checks both sides of the yard. Nothing. She runs inside. She opens cupboards. She checks every room. Nothing. At 10:57 a.m., she calls 000. Hi, my son is missing. He is 3.5. They ask, how long has he been missing? I think, well, we've been looking for him for about 15 or 20 minutes. We heard him, and then we heard nothing. In the 11 years since that phone call, William Tyrrell has never been found. No body, no arrest, no charges, no answers, just a photograph. A 3-year-old boy in a Spider-Man suit, crouching on a desk, looking up at the camera, his mouth open in a roar. It is one of the most recognized images of a missing child in Australian history, and it represents, as one journalist puts it, two sides of humanity, the pure innocence of childhood and the potential evil that lurks among us. This is the story of William Tyrrell. Before the headlines, before the investigations, before everything, there was just a little boy. William Tyrrell was born on June 26, 2011. He was placed into foster care as a baby and went to live with Peter and Angela, a couple from Sydney's affluent North Shore who had always wanted children and couldn't have them biologically. By all accounts, they adored him. William and his foster father Peter had a particularly strong bond. His foster mother Angela described the two as absolutely adoring each other. At the same time, William had come with his own challenges. He could be oppositional, boisterous, unsettled. He was a troubled sleeper. He had been slower to warm to Angela than to Peter, but their relationship had grown, and by the time of the trip to Kendall, he was clingy and affectionate, seeking constant reassurance and attention. He was, by every account, a child bursting with life. He had what his parents called the most amazing smile, one that lit up his entire face. He had a giggle that followed everywhere he went. He loved cars, trucks and planes. He was fascinated by Spider-Man. He had a comfort toy called Little Tara that he couldn't sleep without. He liked to play a game called Mummy Monster, chasing Angela around the garden while she pretended to be frightened. And he loved to roar. His parents described him simply, wherever we went, eyes would just be drawn to him. The family had arrived at Mary's house in Kendall the night before, a day earlier than originally planned because Peter had finished work early on Thursday and wanted to beat the Friday traffic on the Pacific Highway. It was a last-minute change. Nobody outside the family knew they were coming. September 12, 2014, the children woke up in good spirits, excited to be at Nana's house, a place they had visited before and loved. Peter had to make a video call for work. the internet reception in Kendall was notoriously poor, so he left the house at around 8:30 a.m. to make the call from nearby Lakewood. While he was gone, William and his sister Lindsay rode their bike around the driveway. Then William played Mummy Monster with Angela, the two of them running and laughing on the slope below the house until Angela slipped on the loose twigs and leaves and injured her hand. They went inside briefly, then came back out. At 9:37 a.m., Angela stood on the deck above her son and pointed the camera down at him. William was crouching, pretending to be a tiger. He looked up at her, eyes cast to the sky, mouth wide open, and let out a roar. She pressed the button. The photograph would become one of the most recognized images in Australian history. It was the last photograph ever taken of William Tyrrell. Not long after, William began a new game he called Daddy Tiger. He was excited. Peter was due home soon. He and Lindsay always loved running to the gate when their father's car came down the street. He ran around the northwest corner of the house and out of sight. Angela could still hear him roaring. And then it went quiet. She described it later. It was so quiet that even the birds seemed to have stopped chirping. She walked around the corner. She called his name. No reply. She looked for splashes of red from his Spider-Man suit against the green foliage. Nothing. When Peter pulled up to the house a short time later, it wasn't his children who came out to greet him. It was Angela. "Have you got William?" she asked. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "Because he's missing," she said. Peter leapt from the car and took off running, shouting William's name. A neighbor heard the commotion and came out. "I'm looking for a little boy in a Spider-Man suit. Have you seen him? His name is William." Within hours, Benmaroon Drive was swarming. Police, State Emergency Services, or SES, Rural Fire Service, 200 volunteers searching overnight, helicopters overhead, motorcycles through the scrub, police divers searching the waterways and dam. A 3-year-old girl sat in her pram calling out, "You're not in trouble, William. You can come out now." Detection dogs were brought in. They tracked William's scent through the yard, but only within the yard, not beyond the boundary, not into the street, not into the bush. After 5 days, police made a heartbreaking announcement. If William had wandered into the bush and got lost, it was no longer possible he was alive. The investigation became Strike Force Roseanne. 14 full-time detectives and analysts, eventually one of the largest investigations in New South Wales history. Over 2,800 Crime Stoppers calls, more than 1,000 alleged sightings, 690 persons of interest, 11,000 investigative documents, and still nothing. What nobody knew at that time, what couldn't be legally reported, was that William was a foster child. Peter and Angela couldn't be named, couldn't hold press conferences, couldn't appear publicly with their faces visible. The result was a public that didn't understand why the parents weren't talking. Suspicion grew where sympathy should have been. Online sleuths speculated about witness protection, criminal gangs, secrets. The family finally released a statement. "This has torn away the fabric and foundation of our life as we know it. There is a huge gap of space, emptiness in our lives that we feel without William being here with us. We have been entirely shattered, emotionally exhausted, physically and mentally beaten. This is a pure living nightmare." At Christmas 2015, they released a poem. Christmas is a time for happiness. It's a time when families come together and hold each other tight, but not our family and not this Christmas night, while our beautiful little boy William is still missing, absent from our sight. Walk for William events were held across the country, nearly 80 of them, one as far away as Canada. Every year on the anniversary, police renewed their appeal, and every year William remained unfound. Within months, the investigation focused heavily on a local white goods repairman named Bill Speeding. He had serviced Mary's washing machine 4 days before William vanished. Angela had called him that morning, 90 minutes before William disappeared, and left a voicemail he denied receiving. A Spider-Man toy was found in his work van. A witness claimed to have seen his van driving down a dirt track near bushland the day after William disappeared. Police raided his home, drained his septic tank, seized phones, computers, and a mattress. They arrested him for unrelated historical child sex charges from 1987, charges his legal team later proved had already been thrown out of court decades earlier. They deliberately placed him in the same prison cell as another person of interest, hoping one would incriminate the other. At the coronial inquest years later, it became clear police had got it catastrophically wrong. At least one of the witnesses confirmed seeing Speeding at his grandson's school assembly that morning. His work record showed the replacement part for Mary's washing machine hadn't even arrived. His phone records showed he was on another call when Angela's voicemail came in. It never registered on his handset. The voicemail detailed that police had held over him for years simply wasn't true. Bill Speeding was ruled out entirely. He sued the New South Wales Police Force for malicious prosecution. He won. He was awarded $1.5 million in damages. His lawyer called it the worst police prosecution Australia had ever seen. His wife told Four Corners, "I'd like to hear the police apologize to him for what they put him through. They told him they were going to ruin him, and they did." While the Speeding investigation had consumed the strike force, lead detective Gary Giblin had quietly set his sights on someone else, Paul Savage, a retiree in his late 70s who lived directly across from Mary's house on Brennan Drive. His front veranda looked directly toward the back of Mary's property, the area where William was last seen playing. He was the only person outside the Foster family who had heard the children playing that morning. His wife Heather had left for bingo at 10:35 a.m., leaving him with no alibi for the critical window. Then something happened that made Giblin pay very close attention. Covert cameras had been placed in the bushland surrounding near a property as a part of the investigation. One of those cameras went missing. 6 weeks later, Paul Savage handed it to the police station. He had been holding it for 6 weeks. Giblin organized for a dirty Spider-Man suit to be planted along the bush track behind Savage's property. Officers covertly filmed his reaction. The first morning, Savage walked past the suit, paused for approximately 12 seconds, then walked home without reporting anything. That evening, listening devices in his home recorded him saying to himself, "You know I love you, Angel. I bloody screwed up." The following morning, he walked past again. This time, he prodded the suit with his foot, then walked home and called the police to report a suspicious item in the bush. Days later, the devices recorded him saying, "They're going to find something. Mom, don't do on me. What do I do?" After being brought in for questioning and driven home, the device in his car recorded, "Make sure you don't tell anyone, love. They are right after me. Don't tell anyone, love, please. They are right after me. Sorry." Then something extraordinary. In a recorded conversation with his daughter about the Spider-Man suit, Savage remarked he had seen a white thing on the ground covered in dirt. The suit was planted in the bush, had no white on it at all, just red, blue, and black. But William's actual Spider-Man suit had a white spider motif on the back. That detail had never been released to the public. Giblin was stunned. He called Savage and asked about the suit. Savage described it again as white. It was a detail only someone who had seen the real suit could have known. Despite all of this, the recordings proved nothing conclusively, and Dublin's pursuit of Savage would ultimately cost him everything. In recording conversations with Savage without a warrant, Dublin had breached the Surveillance Devices Act. He was convicted, fined $10,000. His 25-year homicide career was over. Outside court, he said, "The court says I went too hard to find out what happened to William Tyrrell. I couldn't live with myself if I did anything less, so I stand by what I did." But there was another name, one that kept coming up, one that many believe holds the real answer. Frank Abbott was an elderly man who had been living rough in a caravan 10 kilometers north of Kendall at the time of William's disappearance. He was described by townspeople as a dirty old man. Parents warned their children to stay away from him. He was already known to the police. At the time William vanished, he was out on bail for sexually abusing an 8-year-old girl. His criminal history was extensive: breaking and entering, theft, firearm offenses, escaping custody, and decades earlier, in 1968, 17-year-old Helen Harrison had gone missing while riding her bike near Sydney. A week later, her semi-naked body was found in a shallow grave. Frank Abbott was a person of interest at the time, but his parents backed his alibi and there was no evidence to link him. Years later, while serving time for unrelated offenses, Abbott allegedly confessed to a fellow inmate that he had killed Helen Harrison. He faced trial twice. The first jury couldn't reach a verdict. The second found him not guilty. Abbott bragged about beating the charge, considered it a badge of honor. During the William Tyrrell investigation, Abbott made a series of alarming comments. When the police were raiding Bill Spedding's property, Abbott allegedly told 2 separate people that police were looking in the wrong spot. He told another person he had smelled a dead body in the bush near Logan's Crossing. He said he knew the difference between a dead kangaroo and a dead human. Abbott had a direct connection to the case. His friend Ray Porter drove an old white Commodore station wagon, similar to one of the suspicious vehicles reportedly seen on Benaroon Drive the morning William disappeared. Witnesses said Porter often let Abbott borrow the car. Abbott didn't have a driver's license. In early 2019, Ray Porter was in an aged care facility with not long to live. He struck up a conversation with a nurse named Christine. He told her that on September 12, 2014, he had driven to pick up his best mate from a shed behind Kendall School. When he got there, his mate had a cute little boy with him. He said he had driven his friend and the boy 300 kilometers north. The nurse asked if the boy was William Tyrrell. Ray said yes. He never named his friend, but he had only ever spoken of having 2 friends. One of them was Frank. But when Ray Porter passed away, his sister-in-law found a letter in his belongings that had been sent from prison. It gave instructions for Ray to pick up a boat and move it. It was signed, "Your good friend, Frank." From prison, Abbott's phone calls were being recorded. He told a friend that 2 people had been involving in taking William. He didn't want to say their names over the phone. He asked his friend to visit so he could write them down. The friend visited. Abbott handed over a note with 2 names written on it. The friend took the note directly to the police. Those names have never been publicly revealed. And then, 2 young brothers, survivors of Frank Abbott's sexual abuse, told a teenager something that stopped everyone cold. They said William Tyrrell was dead. They said he had been stuffed into a suitcase. They said the person who killed him was Frank Abbott. Abbott had threatened them. He had told them he would snap their mother's neck if they ever told anyone. 2 separate confessions implicating Abbott, one from an old man on his deathbed, one from a terrified child. Neither had any reason to lie. Frank Abbott was sentenced to 16 years in prison for 10 counts of child sex offenses. He was never questioned at the coronial inquest. The coroner's decision not to question him was withheld from the public. The reason has never been explained. In November 2021, 7 years after William disappeared, police held a press conference. They were returning to Kendall. New evidence had come to light. The new suspect was William's foster mother, Angela. Police had developed a theory. William had not been abducted. He had accidentally fallen from the balcony at Mary's house. Angela had discovered his body, and rather than call for help, fearing she would lose custody of William's sister Lindsay, she had made a decision that would haunt the investigation ever since. She allegedly loaded his body into her mother's Mazda, drove down the Betar Creek Road, and disposed of him in the thick bushland. Only then did she call 000. Police had covert recordings in which Angela told a friend that William's skeleton would be found in 30, 40, 50 or 200 years when they are doing a clearing. They had the nearly 20-minute gap between when she noticed William missing and when she called emergency services. They had her unexplained drive down Better Creek Road before calling 000, a detail she hadn't disclosed until days after the disappearance. Angela was summoned to appear before the New South Wales Crime Commission, a highly secretive criminal intelligence body with the power to compel testimony under oath. Over 2 days of intense questioning, she was confronted with the police theory. She denied it repeatedly, crying, saying, "No, no, no. I didn't take William. I haven't dumped his body. I've not touched him. I don't know where he is. If you want to dig up that entire house of Mum's, dig it up. I didn't touch him." In November 2021, hundreds of officers descended on Kendall. Mary's former house on Benaroon Drive was extensively searched. The front garden under the balcony was dug up. Every shovel of soil was sifted by hand. Luminol tests were conducted for blood. Cadaver dogs searched underneath the house. Mary's Mazda was seized from its new owners in Sydney and taken for forensic examination. Better Creek Road, the route Angela had driven, was cleared with machinery. An area the size of 3 football fields was searched by hands. Over 15 tons of soil, sediment, and leaf litter was sifted through. Nothing, no human remains, nothing directly connected to William Tyrrell. In June 2023, police recommended charges against Angela for preventing the course of justice and interfering with a corpse. The DPP was asked to assess the brief. In May 2024, police asked the DPP to suspend consideration until after the inquest resumed. The inquest resumed in November 2024, and the bombshell everyone was waiting for, the compelling evidence that justified years of scrutiny against Angela, never came. The counsel assisting the coroner confirmed there was still no forensic evidence, no eyewitnesses. The police theory was just a theory. The inquest collapsed. The coroner cancelled the final hearings. Written submissions were called for. Findings remain outstanding as of 2025. In May 2025, Angela's conviction for assaulting a child in her care, a different child, not William, was quashed on appeal. The judge described her as having led a blameless life and said the incidents occurred against a unique and heartbreaking set of circumstances. Gary Jublin, the detective who spent 4 years on this case and lost his career pursuing it, still does not believe Angela was involved. He was the detective who cleared her twice. He gave her a hug outside court when charges were dropped. At the coronial inquest, a statement was played to the court from William's sister Lindsay. She was 10 years old when she recorded it. She said, "This is my brother we are talking about. In my mind, no one is trying, so I've made the decision to do something about that. I hope this speech today makes you solve the case. If it doesn't, when I'm officially an adult, I will be in the police force, specifically a detective, and I will find my brother and won't give up until he's found. Not a day goes past that we don't think about him. He's a loving, kind, sweet boy who was annoying at times, but the day he disappeared, we lost everything. We lost my innocent brother. He needs to be found. So please help our family, but most of all, me, find our precious William." Lindsay was 5 years old the morning William ran out of the corner of their grandmother's house and never came back. She told police that just before he disappeared, he was running out to see Daddy's car. He will be 14 now. 11 years. One of the largest investigations in Australian history. A $1 million reward that has never been claimed. Hundreds of persons of interest. Thousands of documents, multiple searches, a coronial inquest that ran for 5 years and delivered no findings, an innocent man whose life was destroyed by malicious prosecution, a lead detective whose career ended in a courtroom, a foster mother who has been publicly named as a suspect with no evidence ever being presented to support that theory, and 2 witnesses whose testimony implicating Frank Abbott, a convicted pedophile who bragged about beating a murder charge, was heard, noted, and seemingly set aside. William's foster mother released one statement through the entire investigation. She said, "I love William as much as any mother could love her child. William made my life complete. I loved him fiercely. I just loved being his mummy. My life with William was happy, fun, and an adventure. Every day was different." His biological mother, Amy, said simply, "No other family should ever feel the need to fight tooth and nail for those in leadership positions to take notice. And somewhere out there, possibly in a prison cell, possibly not, someone knows what happened on Benaroon Drive on the morning of September 12th, 2014. Someone knows what happened to the little boy in the Spider-Man suit. Someone knows why he roared and then he went silent." William Tyrrell was born on June 26, 2011. He was 3 years old when he disappeared. He would be 13 years old today. If you have any information about William's disappearance, contact Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000. A $1 million reward is still on offer. This has been The Unknown Files, and William Tyrrell deserves better than this. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Unknown Files. It's me, Swarnim, your host, and subscribe to the channel and listen to other podcasts of mine if you like similar cases. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.